Right. A very good afternoon to everyone. I would like to welcome you all to the fourth season of our MRSI's monthly Wednesday webinar. I'm Ashwini, your host for today's MRSI's monthly webinar. To the next slide. Yeah. Let me just briefly talk a little bit about our organization, the Market Research Society of India, also known as MRSI. MRSI is not-for-profit association of providers and buyers of research and insights. The core purpose of MRSI is primarily to create awareness of our industry, to establish and promote professional standards, and also to provide a platform for market research professionals, not just to engage, but also to showcase work and to collaborate. To drive engagement among members of MRSI hosts monthly webinars on various diverse topics. The topics are theme-based, and the theme at MRSI that we are driving is the changing face of market research. And today's webinar is pretty unique. In past, we recently rolled out a survey to hear from our audience who attended historical webinars to know exactly what they want to hear. One of the key elements that came out really strong was how technology is being leveraged in today's research fraternity on the research world. So today's topic is extremely apt to it. The topic is all about the playbook for smartphone and analytics tech in market research. And I'm extremely pleased to introduce our today's speaker for the session, Manoj Zavane. He is the founder and CEO of Vition. Manoj, just to talk a little bit about Manoj and us, he has over 25 years of experience. He started his journey handling as a classic product management function in telecom service operators in India. He was responsible for managing the complete P&L for the largest telecom circle in India, that's the UP one. And he also headed the innovation management for Bharti in India. He held various, he's a part of various industry forums, including IAMAI, European Business Group, etc. He's a technology, he's completely aware of all the technology and the development and deployment in India. He's now a full-time entrepreneur starting his own venture here. He's also mentored various startups in the field of technology, analytics, and telecom. Now, before I hand over the mic to Manoj, I want to review the functionality of today's webinar. Your participation is extremely important throughout the session. Right now, we have kept everyone on mute to avoid background noises that may distract you from listening to the webinar. Throughout the presentation, I will be managing the chat functionality. You can enter your questions and comments in the question box throughout the course of the presentation. And towards the end of the session, we will attempt to have an answer to your questions. Now, before I hand over the session to Manoj, Manoj, I want to begin with a question to you. Now,
sure.
There are, you're aware of market research and you're a complete tech individual, right? Yeah. Now, what, according to you, from the technology perspective, what are the basic building blocks for a market research? How do you view these building blocks? So, I wanted to start off with that. So, without any further ado, all over to you, Manoj, on this.
Wonderful. Thanks a lot, Ashwini, and a very good afternoon to everyone. I am assuming I am audible. Maybe just I from Ashwini will help because everyone else is on mute. Ashwini, is that okay?
Yes. Yes,
okay,
perfectly
great.
audible.
Excellent. And thanks a lot. That sounded like a perfect segue into the title that I had at least put out. And as they say, it is preaching to the choir in a literal manner over here, because I am talking to a bunch of extremely important and talented individuals from the market research sector who are probably hearing into this webinar and seeing the slideshow currently. And with due regards, I thought just going back to first principles, it may be useful to tell you how a technologist thinks when he or she kind of looks at a particular domain. And to me, just maybe it is oversimplifying the whole thing, but the building blocks that I see is a kind of a trinity from data to insights as far as market research is concerned. It is data acquisition, data assimilation, and data analysis. So this thing kind of acquisition, assimilation, and analysis is the way in which some of us try to simplify the problem, coming in largely from the technical kind of background, and then getting a solid experience of business over the last 2 decades in various functions, it just allows me to probably almost manifest my own thinking and what I have been experiencing into how this is. So for those who find this too simplistic, that's the reason why I thought first principles background is trying to put it like that. On data acquisition, I have seen various ways in which data is collected, either it is active or passive. And just to punctuate the thesis that I am going to go through this presentation for is largely based on passive collection mechanisms, and that also at a extreme technology level using an SDK. I will unravel this as we keep on going through the presentation today. Collation mechanisms of how we are putting it in, whether it is fed in by human beings or there is a direct API, and I can explain this in great amount of detail to whoever is interested offline. Tabulation mechanisms then get into whether it is an Excel sheet or a Access or any other mechanism that is used for ODBC or online database connectors. All this is what I classify in the acquisition stage. Some of this may sound jargonical to you at this point in time, but this is what our life is, where we find the intersection of market research and technology. So please bear with me. This is what I call the tabulation ready phase. That feeds into the assimilation phase, where you unify the data, cleanse the data, and explore the data. I'm going to take an example once we come to this particular section in our chat today, and maybe it will become even more clearer as to why I'm saying what I'm saying, which I call getting the data ready for the analysis stage. And when we get to the analysis stage, you are into classic reporting formats based on the customer that is demanding it, or looking at the problem to be solved and finding data to be fitting it, pattern matching it. And eventually, जो हिंदी में बोलते हैं, it's खाना आंखों से खाया जाता है. People actually eat with their eyes is where the visualization layer or the presentation layer actually comes in, which is where I say this is the stage of market research which makes it insights ready, which is the kind of goal of market research, to come out with insights that will be useful for solving a problem, let's say. So this is the overall framework that you will see, ladies and gentlemen, which I'll be double clicking on each box that you see here as we go ahead.
No, I think this is a great point that you have walked us through. But for all these three, what are the various technologies? What are the elements that go in to make this happen? If you could share some of your views on that and certain challenges that come up with it.
Yeah. Exactly, and I think this is going to be the real body of the presentation today, if you may. And while we will agree on the three broad kind of parts of the market research framework, I will now start double clicking on each one of them, and what technologies are associated is what I'll try to bring out today. All of us engineers are very, very aware of a three-tiered business architecture or a technical architecture or a solution architecture. Normally, every tier has got three components. One is what is in touch with the front end, which is with the consumer or the panelist in this case. The second is the compute engine, or what we call famously as the middleware. And the third is the publishing engine, which what we see as visualization dashboards. Again, three compartments in the same train of thought. So if you take the consumer side, which is the panelist side, as we say, largely it is about data being collected passively or actively from a panelist and reposited into a nicely constructed and structured database, which brings to the server side, which is where you do unification, you do cleansing, apply business rules. It's like the whole gearbox of the market research organization sits over here, more like operations, I can say. Eventually goes to the customer side, where the customer has to consume this data, analyze data, let us say by the market research organizations, either in terms of dashboards or in terms of downloadable reports or in terms of automated deliveries that happen in a particular format. And while we look at this, there are two deliverables that or expectations from each one of these stages or phases, I would say, is something that I have tried to put in kind of semantic portion like this. The front end needs to be resource light. The panelist should be least bothered about what is happening on the device that he or she has volunteered to be on the panel with, and it should be frictionless, let's say. And I will illustrate this as we go ahead. The guiding rails of the middle one is it has to be extremely efficient in terms of writing queries. That's what we do. We convert business problems into queries, and it has to be scalable. In case of passive measurement, as the panel grows, the data grows by and a completely logarithmic ratio, and therefore scalability is very, very key for server side interactions and technologies. And finally, on the customer side, it is but natural. It needs to be as interactive as possible intuitively, and it needs to bring out the right analytical frameworks that are there. That is how I am just going to now double click on each one of these in order to come to the layer of technologies, starting with the consumer side. So as I said, the consumer side starts with the context of this is a passive measurement system for the discussion that we will do today. And for me, it means that the footprint of the SDK is software development kit. It is actually the root of an application. An application is an SDK with clothes on, as you can say. Like people say that a brand is a product with clothes on. It is exactly similar to that. However, given the multiplicity of applications that people carry on their phones and the context being a smartphone, we need to make sure technically that the footprint is very, very small. The real estate that is being consumed on the phone is very small. I highly recommend that anybody trying to do this needs to look at an SDK that is less than 1 megabit and an application not more than 10 megabits that can be uploaded onto a particular smartphone, just as a guide rail, given to it. The second key, and people towards the end of the day, they are struggling to get their phones up over there. With the lockdown, maybe chats have increased, the phone usage has increased, data consumption has increased, and therefore we need to be super, cognizant to the fact that battery is a very important element. And if your SDK is constructed in a manner of, if your app is constructed in a manner that it will always keep on consuming resources of the phone, then you've got the panelist who is at some point in time say that, boss, this is not working out, and they just delete off that application. So we need to be cognizant. The third and last point is, while data has become extremely cheap in our country, at least in India, we need to be cognizant of the heap stack memory, what we call as the computing memory or the RAM, the rapid access memory of a device, and see to it that you are not kind of impinging too much on that particular aspect, so that again, the consumer or the panelist needs to be completely rest assured, saying that the application is doing its work in the background, it is taking the data that is requisite, and it is throwing it to the backend without having any repercussion on my day-to-day life. That is the resource light portion. The frictionless portion actually comes from what we call as the UX, the user experience side. And if your application ideally is hosted on any of the Play stores, either the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store, it is better for the consumer, because then there is a unitary point where you are distributing this application from. I have observed many times that there is market research companies who use side-loaded applications, which is a kind of an APK that they call, that gets transmitted either through the WhatsApp carrier of a field agent, or it is reposited on the website of the market research organization. And sometimes it becomes a bit clunky, a very, version control management goes a bit haywire. So my recommendation is that you should try to, as much as possible, host it on a Play Store for consistency. The second but natural thing, and we cut across socioeconomic classifications in our country, going right from A1 to E2 or even R1, R2, if you may. For a representative panel that you're doing in the market, large panels, 20,000, 30,000, it becomes important to have the interfaces not necessarily overtly textual, but it should be overtly pictorial, is my honest recommendation. And whatever number of A/B testing that you want to do before releasing the application in the market, even if it is on a panel of 3,000, 5,000 people, it needs to have an intuitive interface, which is a point and click kind of thing. What you see here on the screen basically is the NCCS gathering mechanism, which I'm sure many of you are using with the two questions. One is based on ownership, the other one is based on education. And the last point on this is, as we are market research kind of fraternity, terms and conditions for usage of data, for the amount of time that the data is being collected, what type of applications we are collecting data from, needs to be absolutely transparently visible in the terms and conditions, even if it means it undergoes 6, 7, 8 kind of variations with a law firm, that you put it up together for the benefit of the consumer. This, to me, ladies and gentlemen, is a very important aspect, the user end aspect, because we cannot take our panelists for granted. Remember, he or she has decided to give us data in all earnest, in earnesty. While there is a little bit of incentive that we do give, as most of us do give, let us say, it needs to be as smooth and as resource light as possible. That is the first part of the story. Coming to a very key component of the story, and this is where a lot of technology jargon gets normally thrown at market research people from the so-called software developers or solution architects, is where I would like to deliberate a little bit more. Let's say the first thing that you do when you're computing at the center is you unify data. There is data that comes from various regions. There could be data that comes from various customers. There could be data that comes from either the registration page, and then data that comes from the events cycle of a particular application. These are two different data sets. They need to be unified properly. In simple Excel terms, it is called as VLOOKUP, with a central column that you have, which is normally either the digital identifier of the consumer or the panel identification number, let us say. We have to be very careful to make sure that the data is married in the right way. The second part it comes to is a data cleansing thing, and I would love to take an example over here from the business that I am currently handling. We are collecting passive data on the usage of content on a smartphone. There is a small kind of patented technology that we use for that, which picks up this data from applications at a meta tag level. So example, I may be listening to Spotify as an audio platform. Within Spotify, I am listening to Lata Mangeshkar Top 10 as a playlist, and in that playlist, I'm listening to Tere Bhegi Bhegi Palko Se as a song, let's say. The data that is associated with these two meta tags, one of Lata Mangeshkar playlist and second of the song name, and maybe there is an album also that it belongs to, needs to be carefully taken back into the system, so that the across application, that a Spotify may spell Lata Mangeshkar with a capital L, but a Savan may spell Lata Mangeshkar with a small l, let's say, in the makeup of their application. That needs to be reconciled in a very correct manner. And in my experience, machine learning has come to the rescue of a lot of people over the last 5 to 10 years, let's say, where we have been able to reduce the amount of manual interfacing and errors that happen in getting all these kind of trained data sets alive and therefore active at the back end. That's just an example. There are a lot of things that happen when you get Lata Mangeshkar written in actually Devanagari script, or there is a Mikka Singh written in Punjabi script, Gurbani script as they call. All these need to be converted by using various technologies, which we are conversant of. Let us say the fraternity is conversant, but that's what I meant by calling it data cleaning, just as an example. Then comes a business rule application. If you see at this particular corner, and business rule application means, let's say, we as a market research organization and the customer have decided, my customer is a broadcaster or my customer is a content company, for example, and we have decided that, okay, listenership means any stream that is greater than 6 seconds, or viewership means any stream that is greater than 15 seconds. These kind of cuts then need to be taken on the data. Or it could be a geographical cut, saying that there is an expectancy of 9 cities, top 9 cities. There is an expectancy of 21 cities, and there is an expectancy of town class classifications. The data is same. It gives you the same latitude, longitude, or it gives you the same IP address resolved kind of locations. When you pull it together, it needs to be consistent with what business rules you have agreed with your customer. That's what I mean by saying business rules. And the last thing is when you have a third party data ingestion. So continuing with the example of Lata Mangeshkar in this case, let's say I also get information, tertiary information, that it belonged to a film called Anand. It was released in 1972. The director was Mr. Chattopadhyay, and music was given by O.P. Rallan, and so on and so forth. This external data, but pertaining to the same song, is taken from a tertiary data source, and that also needs to be merged back to enrich your data. These are things that happen in our daily life. These are things, when I say daily life, it is market researcher's life. And therefore, these four things need to be cognizantly practiced and cleanly coming out, in the technological deployments that we do. When you take it as what are the deliverables, I would say I am very, very, kind of careful about this data as a market researcher. It needs to be encrypted when the data is moving from point A to point B. It can be from the handset to the server, or it can be from the server to the dashboard. But both these points need to have a proper, HTTPS encryption or a PKI encryption, as it is called, because we are dealing with people's data, we are dealing with panelists' data, we are dealing with personal data, let us say over here, without having any PII getting transmitted from one place to the other. So that's my primary requirement, and hence the technology stack that gets built out. You should be asking these bright questions to your software developer, saying that I hope you are using, soaping it or salting it, or there are some techniques that are used for this. The second key thing is about being robust and hardened. What I mean with this is that if I put a more than 16 lakh lines of data in an Excel sheet, you normally find that it doesn't really pick it up. Then you have to move to Access. If I get 1.2 crore lines of data every day, which is what we get, for example, there is no other way but for me to connect my SQL server, that is the server side, directly to a Power BI or a Tableau kind of dashboard, or getting it into an SPSS kind of package from IBM, and therefore it needs the robustness to handle these oodles of data. So that is scalability and robustness, both of them. When I say hardened, it's a very technical term. My apologies for using jargon again, but it means that the way in which the data is packaged when it sits on your server, there are levels of penetration that it can go to. And this is a specification you need to put in front of your software developers, that your servers need to have a certain degree of hardening in order to be utilized in a proper manner. Last point over here, as I said probably earlier, is that scalability. When you have a panel of 3,000 people with one city that you begin with, it's fine. But when you start increasing, because customers start demanding that I want to go to metros and then to tier 1 and tier 2, and finally you have 21 cities with 14 town classes, you naturally have to find a way to build up this whole outfit that it scales in a completely kind of seamless manner. That is the dissertation on this middle box, ladies and gentlemen. And as I move to the next box, meaning as there are questions coming to your mind, either keep them ready. Ashwani and I will be more than happy to take them, or we can address them offline later. If it is jargonical, meaning my apologies, but I do need to tell you that these are technologies that are at play when you are playing around with data. The last thing, which is a very pleasurable thing, to me personally, and I must say, is the data needs proper visualization. Where I have faced challenges over here is like I said, once the data crosses the 20 lakh lines, there are various technologies that need to be used, and one of the most prevalent ones, call it big data technologies or Hadoop based technologies, as they say, is something that is prevalent in the data world. I see many people on LinkedIn going and taking classes, trying to keep up with the whole changing world of market research, as Ashwani very aptly said that season 4 is all about. And I would really, really urge the fraternity to be up with the Joneses, with this. So whether it is BigQuery writing, or whether it is utilizing Google Analytics, or anything to do with a dashboard like a mixed panel, I think it is better to have these facilities available. The key is that it needs to be smooth and user interactive. And I would just like to call out an example. Let's say when I am used to SPSS, just because I've been using SPSS, for the last 2 decades in various capacities, right from my business school days in Narsimunji, for example. But it's not necessary that it's a very numerate kind of package, probably one of the best in the world, but it is numerate. Whereas when I move to a Power BI, or when I move to a Amazon Redshift or a Tableau, they probably have taken this learning and converted it into pictorial evidences of the same data. In doing that, you need user interactivity, which is most important. The data needs to be structured in a manner that your rows and columns can be dragged and dropped, just like a pivot table that you have in Excel. And that is what I look for in a quality in dashboards that are presented. And obviously there are technologies to make it very, very seamless. Finally, I would say it needs to come with a little bit of intuitive analytics, any dashboard. That one is exhibiting what the customer has asked for, which are X number of rows and Y number of columns and Z number of fields. If there is a small little intuitive analytics ability that is built into a dashboard, it's always customer delight. I found it to be saying that, oh, I can now check what is the filter. Let me apply the filter of Pune, and let me see what is woman 35 plus, consuming, which genre is she consuming in Spotify in Pune, for example. Even though the customer may have asked only the classic 18 bucket model, which is 3 ages, 2 genders, and three NCCS buckets, let us say. These are some of the guide rails, in my humble observation, that we have come to. I would just want to then probably, reflect a little bit over here. Ashwini, unless you have something coming to your mind,
Yes.
you can. Is there something that
Yeah.
is irking you?
Yes, actually, Manoj, this is a great part that you have, spoken to us about the various aspects and broken it down to the technology and its application. You also did talk about the kind of learnings where people are signing up for courses and trying to hone their skill in analytics and all of that thing.
Correct.
I wanted to talk to you a little bit about a problem that we face in market research. I wish
Yeah.
economists would have thought about it and given it a nice term, but it is called the recall problem. Uh, you
Uh-huh.
know, uh, in typical market research, we ask, so when was the last time you recall having this particular chocolate or a particular, television serial that you saw, etc., etc. And leveraging mobile phone to do analysis, etc., is like
Yeah.
having a computer in your pocket.
Correct.
Now, I wanted to check with you what kind of, the skills, the learnings, do we as a fraternity need to brace ourselves with this new way of thinking, the new millennial culture of leveraging mobile phone to do everything and everything.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And I think, thanks for being modest and humble. I think, Ashwani, that you plainly table, and like you've done over the last 2 days that we've been interacting, that is there a cue that we want to be kind of ready for the new world? I'm again going to dip into a little bit of technology here, but rest assured, the recommendation from me will be to take certain courses or to learn with some people. Again, I'm sticking to the same trinity and breaking it up, because large market research organizations have these roles also that are very specific. Smaller outfits like us, let us say, need to do these roles seamlessly. So there are some of us who are generalists in all three buckets, but there are some of them who are specialists, let's say. I would want to present it like this, Ashwani, and in the same format, that make sure when you're looking at acquisition that you're asking the right questions to your developer on what is your front end, which is how light is your HDK or your JavaScript in case you're doing it on a website. How good is the UX of your app? Remember the first slide that I presented. There are some people, who have gone down this line and taken courses on the Android ecosystem, where it is very simple. You can build your own app. That app may just be telling you to remember to drink your 8th glass of water by 6 o'clock in the evening. But the whole feeling that you get, saying that, hey, I have designed my own app, let's say, howsoever frugal it may be, it's all point and click. It makes you ready to discuss with your developer in a slightly more engaged manner, I feel. So look at these questions that are critical towards the UX and the footprint of the SDK and app. And like I've said, look up ecosystems that are doing this, and you can build your own app also very easily. The very important one, which I would say give it to a specialist only, is security. And like I said, during transmission, your smartphone is picking up the data. You have got the permission of the consumer to pick up the data or the panelist, and it is being transmitted over the air. Let's say either on a GSM network or a CDMA network or 5G network that is going to come in. And at that time, it needs to be secure. This is a specialist job, guys. This cannot be kind of outsourced unless you have a very solid person in your own department. Finally, this data gets stored, and like you have seen many examples that unfortunately keep on coming to us of people whose applications are getting hacked, or whose passwords have got en masse outside of the storage that they have done. We need to be cognizant that there are no leakages. So be conversant that there are security technologies very highly developed that need to be always part of your application. If it makes your application a little bit costly to develop, believe you me, I would take that call. Let's be erring on the side of caution is my first message on this front end bucket. This makes your data tabulation ready, as I said. Moving to the next bucket, this is the most intense bucket, and insofar as computing is concerned, I would break it down into 4 parts. One is the cloud stack, as they say, whether it is AWS or whether it is Azure or whether it is Google Cloud or something like that. It all is available. Lots of reading material is available. Simple courses are available to understand that, hey, what is happening in that under the hood of AWS. While you may not need to know exactly what are the subroutines and the do loops that are going on over there, but it is always nice to have a slight amount of knowledge on how your data is going to move over there. What is the querying system that is being used? I would focus on bucket number 2 for market researchers in particular. And if you have to up your own, learning quotient, take 1 or 2 very simple courses that are available. It can be Coursera, it can be Simply Learn, it can be even Amazon has some very beautiful courses in this, and you will see the magic of what you can do to your own Excel sheets. And we have, I would say, we have lived with Excel for the past 3 decades, 4 decades, and it has gone from strength to strength. But machine learning gives it a way in which your repeat jobs, your classifications, your pattern matchings can become that much more simpler. And it is, remember, it is garbage in, garbage out, which means the better that you train your algorithm with more amount of data, the better it is going to have a predictability or reduction of manual interventions. So if at all there are any courses that I would recommend or upping the quotient of analytics people who are sitting in market research buckets, I am a strong proponent of machine learning. With the diversity of Indian languages, when you cut your whole data set by languages, it becomes critically important to have these kind of Python scripts also running, which will give you NLTK, which is natural language processing libraries, or ILTK, which is Indian language processing libraries. So please do bear this in mind and focus on this. Attempt a course over this weekend, spend 2 hours learning, and you will see the magic that this can do. The third and fourth thing is more to do again with specialists, and I would say better to depend on your developers for this, where you have to actually write a rules engine. It is better that a market researcher frames the system, frames the problem in a proper way, saying that I am looking for this particular data cut for this particular segment, for this particular time, for this particular geography. Let us say you frame the segment, the problem, and give it to your SQL developer or give it to your Python query writer who is a specialist, because a error at this level, at this point, can magnify itself into the data, and you don't want that to happen. So make sure that this is done by a specialist. The last job is of ETL, as they say, extraction, tabulation, and laying down layer or layering the data. is where again we need a little bit of specialist skill set. This comes into play when you are dealing with a key problem, saying that do you want to analyze data for a limited period of time, or do you want to analyze data for looking at a trend over 1 year? This portion becomes immensely important because you cannot have that much amount of data stored in the rapid access memory of your machines, let's say, and also have the ability to have a lot of data dumps sitting over there for last 1 year. So there is a trade-off. I will come to the learnings page, when we come to it. These are the technologies that you should be actually, little bit colloquially aware. Let's call it in terms of the second layer. The last layer is what I feel a lot of people are already aware of, let's say, and a lot of people are used to these point and click tools like a Tableau or a Power BI. But then looking at a specialist, kind of communities where there is, I was struggling, just to give you an anecdote, I was struggling to make a Pareto chart, and I wanted a double-sided Pareto chart because we wanted to see the variation or the ABC analysis of a genre of content, which is, let us say, Bollywood music. And within the genre of content, we wanted to see the Pareto-ness or the ABC analysis of of Arijit Singh, for that matter, let's say, of a singer or as an artist. And to develop that Pareto chart, while I could visualize it, while I could do it, by doing first principles, there was no way I was able to crack it on a Tableau. So all I did was, put this query up on the Tableau community, and lo and behold, within 12 hours, I got 6 responses from various parts of the world, giving me laid down steps on how to do it. The whole thinking of a open source, kind of world, or a broadly connected world, let us say, is that if you have a problem to be understood, go to a Stack Overflow. If you have to do something that you get a comment how you can do it better, go to a Reddit. Use many of these forums that are available in order to bounce off your problems. It's also a kind of a learning. And then at some point in time, you will find yourself also contributing to these problems when people actually put it out. The last point to get data insights ready is the publishing framework. If your customer is used to Tableau, you have to find a way to get them a Tableau dashboard. If your customer is not used to Tableau and just wants a PDF file, let us say, which can become voluminous, you have to have the temerity and the preciseness of generating that data and handing over to the customer. So net, if I just summarize this light blue bucket over here, these 2 boxes, 4 and 6 boxes put together, if you ever want to double click on any one of these, get into some of the next level of technology understanding layer, it will just make you feel better. It will just make you understand and converse better with your developer, so that there is no disconnect between the cup and the lip. That's what I would say, Ashwini, at this point in time.
Thanks, Manoj. I think this brings me up, I would like to pose a question to you. And if you could just share your experience in an example.
Yeah.
You spoke about the Lata Mangeshkar song, etc. I mean, that was a great example, though. But if, let's say, if I want to launch a new serial in Marathi and comedy, so how does one go about developing a technology like this? Like traditional market research would come in my mind to go in for a concept testing, etc., and then go ahead with this approach. But if I were to leverage this technology and make technology as an integral part of the organization in itself, how does one go about doing this? With an example, if you could just share.
Got it. And just before we jump into that, Ashwani, I just want to summarize. Maybe this is the key slide that everyone can take back home on whatever I have spoken so far, if it has made any sense. That the questions that you have to ask yourself, even before the technology, are what are listed in this middle blue box, let's say, light blue, or is that you have to make a choice between multiple applications versus a single application. Make it play to your strength. Let's say you have to be disciplined in release schedules, and very often I have seen that one part of the country is running on version number 1 and one part of the country is on version number 2, let's say, and so also on feature updates. As I said, on the cloud stack, while it is easy to say that it is a turn on and a turn off kind of mechanism, be very sure that there is a typo. It is billing control. The control of the bill has to be in your hands, let's say. And finally, the call between depth versus breadth of data. The last thing that I would say is that there is no choice, in my opinion, that an analyst can say that I only analyze. The analyst also needs to be a storyteller. So it's an and function that I would put over here rather than an or function, saying that I can make the numbers, but somebody else has to make the presentation. I would say that keep this as your Dhupbatti chart, as the chart that you want to look at and see that what is the incremental learning that I need to see in myself. Yeah, that's what I would submit. And now I'll go to Ashwani, the example that seems to be scratching in your mind. Let's assume that you are having digital natives that you need to go to. You want to launch a Marathi channel, which is a language in the country, and therefore targeting maybe Maharashtra, which is 68, 72 million people, let's say, by census. How do I look at what is it that the user and the usage is going to be of this form of content? And that is the framework in which I will try to paint this particular picture, which is pretty much the last thing. I would want to look at user base to begin with. Please remember that the user base is replete with smart devices, whether they are accessing or they will access their television on their smartphones. They may access their applications on their smartphones, or they may have even websites to which they go. The bottom line is smart devices are there and they will remain. The next thing is they have unlimited bandwidth nowadays. Whether you're going to a tier 2 town, of course, I appreciate that it could be slightly difficult in tier 2 towns, but then looking at the way in which e-commerce is spreading, looking at the way in which Bharti, Vodafone, Jio and BSNL are spreading in the country, there would be bandwidth ubiquity. Meaning I am sitting on a line which is 1 gigabits per second. It's an optic fiber that comes to my place in Gurgaon. So you can imagine that it is available. And finally, the combination of content, which in this case we are talking of Marathi content, the cloud, because it is reposited in such a manner that you can access your account while traveling to Jalgaon or when you are back in Mumbai, back in your residence. And finally, you can pay for it at a 7 rupees per day like a Spotify, or a 22 rupees per month, like many other people do. Keep these factors in mind when you're targeting or painting the picture of your audience, that these need to be there. And therefore, these are the cues that you would look into piles of data which are available from people like us or from larger research agencies, let's say, where you want to double click. The second thing is look at the usage. A Marathi channel will be watched by what kind of people? Obviously, language will probably be Maharashtrians, but I'm a Maharashtrian sitting in Gurgaon. So do you want to target language by region, which is only the state of Maharashtra? Or do you want to target language by usage, which is if a particular network knows that I am accessing Lokasatta and Maharashtra Times, let us say, every morning, even if I'm staying in the middle of Haryana, let us say, the target should be based on consumption and not only on region, let us say. So keep that in mind. Look at personal consumption metrics that are happening, and this data is available. So while launching a Marathi channel, I would go and see how many people in the country are accessing their internet with the language trigger put at Marathi. It would probably be the first indicator of the total amount of audience. Can you get these affinities from a Facebook targeting? Can you get it with Google AdWords? Can you go to InMobi and say that I want to target people who are consuming content in Marathi? Or can I go to a PVR and ask him that what was the number of people, of course, before lockdown, who came to see Marathi shows and from which community? That is your PVR Anupam more Marathi friendly rather than your PVR in Dadar, let us say. So these are cues that you will get from local data, from personalization data, let's say. A nice company called Indus OS actually run the whole Android ecosystem in multiple languages. Their data sets are also available, pretty much to be kind of understanding the consumer in the market. So these data sets need to then be considered, Ashwani, for your problem that you want to solve, saying that I want to launch a Marathi channel. but I want to study what kind of smart devices are being used in Marathi. Go to Indus OS, try to get an API from them, look at the language dispersion, look at the gender dispersion of those languages, and so on and so forth. That's the way data needs to be culled out. And finally, I would say that whether it is in mobility or whether it is work from home, consumption pattern of by time of day or by day part, as they say in the media world, let's say, is always available from various parts of the world. Either you are looking at work from home, usage of Zoom or go to meeting like what we are using currently, and what are the parameters that you can understand from there. How can you cut this by language cohorts, if any? Is there, during mobility, people are listening to particular radio channels when they are moving from Ghatkopar via Eastern Express Highway and coming to Dadar, let us say? Is there a particular time when they consume a particular Marathi program? Is there a RJ or an artist that is primarily speaking in Marathi, let us say, maybe part of a overall radio channel? These are the cues that is available as second party and third party data for this particular channel that is wanting to launch, let us say. And I would say most of these are to be found. It is beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. So hence I say, if there is goods and infrastructure availability which is stoking the user base, and you can get cues from people who are vending goods and infrastructure. I am classifying smart devices as goods. Or there are people who have habit formation data availabilities, where there is a ease of use of data that is available and which is published in an anonymized form. These data sets, when you juxtapose one to the other, there is a very good chance, Ashwani, that you will find, to a fair degree of certainty, the audience that you want to target. That particular inventory that you will target either in the digital world, and I would stick to the digital context over here because that is the kind of the context of today's discussion. Then there is nothing else but a very solid measurement and insights mechanism that needs to be coming in before you can even start targeting your target audience. So that is the first port of call. So this whole thing that I've been saying over the last, let's say, 40 odd minutes is about measurement. If your measurement algorithms are correct, if they are passively being collected in a nice way, and if they are juxtaposed with tertiary sources of data like these, let's say, I would bet that your targeting will become that much more efficient. And eventually, remember that activation, which means going and saying, display this particular advertisement to this particular target segment, get a CTR of greater than 1%, or get a brand recall of greater than 72%, will come only if your measurement mechanism is tight, targeting mechanism and activation mechanism comes only after measurement. So if you are launching that Marathi channel, meaning, of course, I would offer my services, Ashwani, to you at any point in time to get this as a business under my belt. But these are some of the things that I would probably want to do. And just to end this, as they say, in God we will always trust for those who are believers, but everybody else has to come to the table with data. Is said by one of the most elitist professors of humankind, W.E. Deming, who is the father of quality measurement, as they say. Ashwani, I would end my monologue over here and over to you in case there is reflections or questions or anything else that you may want to anchor.
Thanks a lot, Manoj. I think this session was truly remarkable and brilliant. It was very insightful, and as we are getting a lot of questions, I had a reflection though. The unique part of leveraging mobile technology and understanding these technologies, it's helping us not think with the idea of lift and shift. It's completely different, and hence one needs to be curious in understanding what is out there and embrace the new learnings coming out there. So I have a question for you, Manoj. So I could begin with the Q&A here, and I request the audience to please share your questions in the chat window so we can put them forward. The question I have is, Manoj, in 2010, if you go back in time, in 2010,
Yeah.
there was a very big sinking feeling, specifically in Western countries. The email usage had dropped significantly. And prior to 2010, people were leveraging email as the source of leveraging information from consumers and understanding their behavioral patterns, etc. This was 2010, and as you're aware, technology is changing rapidly.
Yeah.
Now, would I don't think, I wouldn't be very surprised to see mobile technology giving us the same feeling, maybe a few years further down the line.
Truly.
So the question is, how do you, instead of always trying to catch up, how do you embrace, or rather see the trend change in consumer habits, maybe in technology, etc., and try to be there before others? So I wanted to seek your views around that.
Ashwini, you have forgotten that I am a technical person and not a philosopher. So you are asking me a really, really tough question, but I think it's a very, very, very good reflection. And let me tell you, you took an example which is very solid. Google email-oriented APIs is what most of us market researchers have used, and I would have loved to see a raise of hands in a public meeting, let's say in-person meeting, and I can guarantee you 70% would have raised their hand saying that yes, we have used it. Google, lo and behold, shut off this API last year or in 2019, and this whole kind of bunch of people were at sea saying that array, now we can't do anything. So in 2010, when this whole thing started, and it kind of escalated to a level where they finally had to shut off, was truly being on a treadmill and just being on the same place over and over and over again. Let me tell you another one before I come to the answering of the question, let's say, or at least my attempt to answer. The other thing that is going to happen significantly in the world of digital or technology is that cookies are going to disappear. Google has already made this kind of mountaintop statement. Apple has already gone and disconnected something that they called IDFA, which is if not disconnected, they have toned down the API that they were giving to advertisers for their advertising framework. So when these kind of superhumanly big, known to mankind methods of targeting people or data, if not targeting to understand people better, affinity mechanisms are going away, there needs to be the first port of call is to try and see whether you can enrich your own first party data. So if you're a customer or a market research organization, if you are already having a panel of people that you are kind of close to and you're maintaining, I would recommend strongly that there is a cognitive habit kind of framework that you need to construct or start constructing now, because some of these sources of data may probably undergo a mutation if not a metamorphosis. Having said that, digital technology, probably in the way that you're looking at it today, is going to be enhanced even further. There are two things why I submit on this particular axis. One is the advent of 5G, and your data will be available even faster at your fingertips, let us say, if not in a even more crisper manner. Two is looking at visual recognition technologies, which is at various market research organizations have started using this, and I would think that it is going to happen combined with pattern matching and machine learning. These are the shifts that you will see in the coming few years or coming decade. Your 2010 to today 2020, 21, by 2030, you will see another shift that is happening. I'm not saying that technologies that we are using will stop getting kind of and become redundant, but they will morph into something where you need to be keeping pace with them. So please do be cognizant that we need to keep up with our reading. Read those 4 to 5 books or 5 to 7 blogs that you are following. Keep up the good, gray matter sharpening that you want to do, and somehow be there at the cutting edge of understanding consumer behavior. Meaning no other concrete answer I can give, Ashwani, I'm sorry, but it does mean that change your own behavior to be leading in the studies of others' behavior is all that I can say. Sounds like a punchline, but that's true.
Sure. Thanks, Manoj. Just one last question, Manoj, from the audience, and then we will share the questions that we'll collate and send some more questions over to you. The question is that, what kind of unlearning and relearning process that you have undergone yourself when moving from the traditional MR to the presentation that you have showcased today with the wealth of knowledge that you've harnessed in terms of technology?
Wonderful. Again, very personal question, but and I'm kind of almost happy that the camera is not on so that my age is not known. But starting from a slide rule in my engineering college to getting to a FX82A Casio calculator, and now looking at a computing methodology that I have, which I use machine learning and almost on the verge of using AI, has been a personal, kind of journey that I have learned over and over again. The only unlearning that I have been doing or happens probably consciously is that you need to look at the younger generation and see what their lingo is. You need to reflect upon saying that what is my daughter is 21 years old, so that's kind of a giveaway of I've been more than 50 almost. The discussions that she has in her college forums is something that is very interesting, and those become my kind of cues for unlearning. Coming specifically to market research oriented learning patterns that I have observed in myself over the last 20 years, it has been moving from a chi-square analysis that I would do myself, or a two-tailed ANOVA that I would lay out a table at some point in time, being from the analytics side and very used to Dr. Richard Levin's way of working on statistics. Now, I have unlearned that, fundamentals remaining intact, but learned to use it in interfaces where these are pre-embedded modules like an SPSS, or taking it to the powerful tools like a Power BI. So I would say my change of market research learning has been largely on the analytics side, whereas my colleagues, younger colleagues, have given me the learning on a platter on the digital technology side, whether it is HDK and app, or whether it is compute engines using Kubernetes on the Google platform, let's say. That is a given. You need to rely on certain people, but your core as a market researcher, if you are sharpening it on a 2-year basis or a 4-year basis by looking at what are the analytical tools that you're using and statistical relevance tools, I think that has been my personal journey, and meaning would want to submit that as my learn. Ashwani.
Thanks a lot, Manoj, for sharing your personal journey and your views on this. Thank you so much. And the session has been really insightful, and so thank you so much for taking time out for participating in this session and presenting to all of us. So before we just sign off, I think in the interest of time, Manoj, we will share the questions that have come to us from the audience maybe later during the day. But before we sign off, I just want to let the audience know that there's a heads up. There's an upcoming webinar in the month of March. It's on the 17th of March. So requesting all the members to register for this session. It's going to be an interesting session. It's all about, again, technology, leveraging public domain internet data, leveraging applications beyond sentiment analysis and so on. So it's going to be an interesting one. So requesting you all to sign up, and thank you very much for your time. And thank you so much, Manoj, for taking time out for this session.
That's very much appreciated. And to the audience that I have not been able to directly interact, meaning my heartfelt thanks for having listened through this. And I hope there are some nuggets of information that will be useful to all of you. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.